Harry had a little man.
False. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
You will hear firsthand testimony that the president's campaign advisors urged him to await the counting of votes and not to declare victory on election night. The president understood even before the election that many more Biden voters had voted by mail because President Trump ignored the advice of his campaign experts and told his supporters only to vote in person.
Right.
Donald Trump knew before the election that the counting of those mail-in ballots in several states would not begin until late in the day and would not be complete for multiple days. This was expected, reported, and widely known. You will also hear testimony that President Trump rejected the advice of his campaign experts on election night and instead followed the course recommended by an apparently inebriated Rudy Giuliani to just claim he won and insist that the vote counting stop, to falsely claim everything was fraudulent. He falsely told the American people that the election was not legitimate. In his words, quote, a major fraud. Millions of Americans believed him. Second, pay attention to what Donald Trump and his legal team said repeatedly about Dominion voting machines. Far-flung conspiracies with a deceased Venezuelan communist allegedly pulling the strings. This was, quote, complete nonsense, as Bill Barr said. President Trump's own campaign advisors, his Department of Justice, and his cybersecurity experts all told him the same thing.
I mean, hi, happy Monday. I hope you had a decent, although steamy weekend. Most of you did, right? It's raging hot here too. So, but yeah. So this particular hearing is hearing number 2 in what might be 8 hearings that will show us the 7-part plan to overthrow a legitimate, free, fair, and accurate election and the counting of those votes. So we saw part 1 already. Part 1 was to show that Donald Trump engaged in this massive effort to spread false and fraudulent information to us, the American people, claiming that the 2020 election was stolen from him. Part 1 included the opening statements from the chairman and the ranking member of the January 6th Select Committee. And the opening statements told us what they can and will prove by showing us evidence of their claims. And it was really quite a case. The case is that there was a 7-part plan that Trump engaged in, knowing what he was doing was a complete fabrication and a fraud upon the American people in order to make money, do another grift on his way out the door, and if violence ensued, oh well, maybe Mike Pence deserved it. And he would go to great lengths in order to continue to rake in the dough. Because while he was probably going to lose the prestige of the presidency, he was not going to relinquish the power. And the power in Washington is the money. And so he ran this grift against the American people, against the American government, against the House of Representatives and the United States senators who were present on January 6th and were there when violence ensued, when violence began, when violence erupted, and people literally defecated and smeared it on the walls in the House of Representatives. And people literally were planning to have rapid reaction teams come in as soon as the President of the United States declared martial law or used the Insurrection Act to allow them to shoot and kill everyone who was gathered in the same place in that Capitol on January 6th. This is what Stuart Rhodes, this is what Enrique Tarrio, this is what Joe Biggs, this is what Alex Jones, this is what they all wanted to happen. It's what they wanted to do. They wanted to overthrow the United States government, and Trump was lying to them for money for himself and didn't really care if it unleashed the whirlwind and people died, which they did. 9 people. Although you'd never know that from watching Fox, who denies anybody died. Okay, so today was the first day of the case in chief, and today we saw that Donald Trump falsely and fraudulently decided to do this, that he knew. Everybody told him so, from the Attorney General of the United States to his own campaign advisors to everybody except for a drunk Rudy Giuliani, who said to the president, as he was drunk on election night, just go out there and say you won. Just go ahead and declare a victory. Just go out there. And Donald Trump was being told by everybody and anybody, by Jason Miller, by his own daughter, by his own son-in-law, by his own acting attorney general, by his deputy acting attorney general, by everybody, that he could not and did not win, and that there was no path forward, that the mail-in ballots would obviously, change the result when they started to count them in places where there was heavy mail-in voting. Because remember, we were in the midst of a COVID epidemic that I think he thought would advantage him. He didn't realize that people were going to vote by mail. He didn't realize that people would absentee vote and not give up their right to vote simply because he let COVID go wild in this country. And so everybody told him, they're still counting. Don't declare victory tonight. You're going to look stupid. Okay, there's no way to know. Everybody told him not to do it. Jason Miller testified today that the only one that thought that he should do it was Rudy, and Rudy was drunk.
Is there anyone in that conversation who, in your observation, had too much to drink?
Like Mayor Giuliani.
Tell me more about that. What was your observation about his potential intoxication during that discussion about what the president should say when he's addressed the nation on election night?
And the mayor was definitely intoxicated, but I do not know his level of intoxication when he spoke with the president, for example.
Were you part of any discussions with the people I mentioned, Mr. Stepien, Mr. Meadows, or anyone else, about whether the president should make any sort of speech on election night?
I spoke to the president. They may have been present, but President spoke to the president several times that night.
There were suggestions by, I believe it was Mayor Giuliani, to go and declare victory and say that we'd won it outright.
It was far too early to be making any calls like that. Ballots were still being counted. Ballots were still going to be counted for days. And it was far too early to be making any proclamation like that.
I remember saying that, to the best of my memory, I was saying that we should not go and declare victory until we had a better sense of the numbers.
But Donald Trump did go out and declare victory. He said, frankly, we won that night. And the only person that was advising him to just go out and declare victory that night was Rudy Giuliani, who was inebriated. He was drunk. Okay, let the memes of drunk Rudy begin. Go ahead, start tweeting them out. I started it with Rick Wilson today. I tweeted out my Rudy's drunk meme. You know what, though? We're going to find out so much more. We're going to, we still have to figure out, we're still going to learn, not figure out. We're still going to learn how he pressured Mike Pence to refuse to count the electoral votes, how he reached into the states. Yeah, there's a lot more. Don't have time to listen to the live show? Want to hear more on your schedule? Go to randyrhodes.com and buy a stinking podcast.